Go ahead and start. My name is Jim Matush. Thank you for all of those of you that have joined us. This is a topic that's very apropos for today's world. Steve Denny, my partner. Thank you, Steve, for the, what were we saying, 6 or 7 years that we've known each other. We come from the same mold. Your expertise. Let me go ahead and let you introduce yourself, Steve, and then I'll come back to me.
Great. I'm Steve Denny. I'm one of the founding partners of Innovative Business Advisors located here in the greater St. Louis area. We do three things. Our market is private business company owners, and we help them in three ways. One is we help them when it's time to buy a business to grow, or when it's time to sell a business or transfer it to another owner either within their family or within their network. We also do a significant amount of business valuation work, helping business owners specifically learn the value of their business and learn the secrets on how to grow that value over time, which we'll get into in a lot more detail. And then finally, we do a little bit of business consulting focused primarily on business finance. So we basically teach business owners business finance principles using their own numbers. So it's not like your father's accounting class. You come to class with your business numbers, and we teach you how to really get control over your numbers and control over the direction of the profitability of your business and control over your capital structure, and ultimately how to really build wealth, which then you can sit down and talk with Jim about on how to grow.
My name is Jim Matush, Trinity Wealth Advisors. I've known Steve for many years, and we work well together in terms of playing in the sandbox together. Steve is one of the authorities I love because he comes out of a teaching back. You're going to learn something every time you're with Steve. I very much appreciate how you helped us learn a lot about our business and through our numbers, as you mentioned. It was very helpful for us. And one of the wake-up calls for us many years ago when we did it was just the reliance of the business on me and how we've shifted that over time. So in any event, I appreciate what you've done, Steve. Trinity is a wealth management firm. We're a small team of now 7 people. We just hired a new person 3 weeks ago. So we're still growing, and an eclectic, small family office type of firm that helps people focus on what their purpose, what their meaning for money is, and why they're hanging on to it, and whether that be retirement, whether that be the next generation, whether they're family stewards, whether they are financial independents, the kind of people that want to be independent of what's going on in this crazy world. Those are the kind of people that we help. We're known for our advanced planning and getting into some of the nuances of how you hang on to more of what you make through tax planning, estate planning, pass it on to the next generation, protect it with the right kind of insurance, not the kind that you're sold. And finally, charitable giving. So those are the 4 areas that we focus on. We're going to talk today about built to last, ready to exit. So many of our clients that are business owners, and we love to use Steve, this is a good place to start, have no idea when they come to us of what their business is worth. We, of course, put that down on their balance sheet. We get into the specifics of how they come up with what they think it's worth. And then we will typically refer them to someone like Steve that says, wait a second, let us show you what it's worth in the industry. Steve, how do you figure out, that's probably a good place to start. Give a little overview on determining what is the real value, because I know the business owner's classic mistake is, well, it's worth a lot and much more than I think. So how do you address that issue?
Well, we are business valuation certified experts, if you will, and you know can testify in court, can create documents that the IRS recognizes and accepts, all of the above. But Jim, we teach that there are basically 8 dimensions to your business value. The cornerstone of your business value is your numbers, right? The business. What are the business financial metrics over time? And typically we're looking back 3 to 5 years and measuring the performance over the past 3 to 5 years. That's the cornerstone of the science behind the business valuation metrics, if you will. But there are other non-financial matters that are really important. So one of which is, what's the composition of your income in your business? Do you have recurring revenue? Do you have customers that you serve repeatedly over and over again, and they're very loyal and they provide income for you on a very regular recurring basis? Or do you have to go out and create new customers and new sources of revenue every day? That's a big difference. Another thing is dependence. Are you dependent on a particular customer? Does one customer represent more than 10% of the revenues of your business? Or are you dependent on a particular employee? Is there something that only one person in your company can do? And thus, if something happened to that person, it would have a material impact on your business.
Especially the owner.
Owner dependency. I'm going to come around to that. That's one of the key things, right? Yeah. And then dependency on suppliers. And I always say, if you happen to have an Anheuser-Busch distributorship and all your supplies come from 100% one particular vendor, in that case, it's probably a good thing. But if you're selling, widgets on Amazon and you only have one supplier, that you may not have the same type of brand leverage. And that gets me right to the brand. Has your company developed a brand? How does the market feel about your company? What's your company culture? And typically the objective way that we measure culture is regarding turnover within your company. What level of turnover do you experience? What systems and processes do you have? How repeatable is the work of your company over and over again? We call this, the next one, the differentiation factor. There's a lot of wealth management firms. Jim and his team are very focused on serving a specific audience, and they do it incredibly well. We're honored to be a part of their group of experts that they rely on. And I appreciate very much the nice thing that you said. And Jim, you guys have done a wonderful job differentiating your company from, every other wealth manager. And here we are in St. Louis. I think we have one of the highest densities of wealth management professionals in the country. And you guys have got this thriving, growing, very, very comprehensive practice. And you've done that because you've really differentiated yourself in the marketoplace. That's a measure of value.
90% of your industry thinks that it's all about investing, which today we view that as a commodity. It's very easy to differentiate yourself, but keep going.
Yeah. And the final dimension is what we call the owner freedom. So, is the business dependent upon the owner? And can the owner ever really exit the business? And, one of the questions that we always lead with is, when was the last time you took an extended vacation away from your office? And then, the follow-up to that is, tell me about that. How long were you gone? What happened? How many business calls did you have to take, et cetera? And it's striking that most business owners, even those that are successful, don't feel the freedom to be away for more than, generally a week at a time. It's very rare that we hear somebody say, I've been out for, several weeks or even a month or more, on an extended vacation, and the business seemed to do very, very well without me. That's probably 1 out of 100 times the type of story we hear. And I would tell you, if you're looking to buy a business, frankly, that's one of the things that buyers value the most. They're most afraid of the owner. The seller is so integral to their business that the business will suffer without them. And if the owner can demonstrate that, they really have freedom in their company, that's a very, very rare attribute.
Another topic that we might save for another time is buying a business. Steve, I know you've got we'll mention that briefly. I love the story you told me that is really something that you recommend about like a schooling, go to work for somebody. What did you call that?
Yes, so there's the most popular thing kind of in the social media verse, and I'm an old guy, so you typically don't find me out there trolling the social media verse, but the most popular
Surfing?
thing today is the hashtag ETA, which stands for entrepreneurship through acquisition. And this is being taught in some of the most prominent MBA programs in the country. Originated here at Wash U, and it's proliferated throughout all of the other business schools. And we get a lot of young people that reach out to us on a very regular, recurring basis. Every week I talk to at least a few, and they're always looking for the right business to buy. And I say, I invite them to think about ETA being entrepreneurship through apprenticeship, because the overriding thing I see is these kids don't have any work experience whatsoever. They've never led a team. They've never met a payroll. They've never had to go, talk to a bank to raise capital or anything like that. They've got this book knowledge, but they don't have this practical knowledge. And I invite them to kind of broaden their thinking a little bit about that and think about, let's go find your ideal business opportunity and then go mentor under that owner for a while before you actually pull the trigger. Because as you and I both know, there's a big difference about reading about business ownership and actually being a business owner every day.
Well, this is reminding me that I left out part of the housekeeping. Please feel free. Thank you for joining us today. Looks like we got everybody on now. Use the chat box to ask any questions. If we've skipped over something or gone through something too quick that you want more input on, I'll circle back. I have my chat side opened. You'll see there's our link for getting back to us. So take that down if you find today of interest, but also, and we'll have an offer at the end, but also bring up any questions, any thoughts, as well as ideas for future webinars that we do. Steve, let me shift to probably one of the things that we find most exciting with a business owner client is really preparing them personally, financially, getting them into the operational mindset of what we call that what's next in life. So you've got this business, you're now looking at, oh, okay, what is next? Maybe it's age, maybe it's health. Hopefully it's not a surprise. We'll circle back and talk about the recent situation that you got referred into, but talk a little bit about the team of advisors and why that's so important with bringing people together. No one advisor kind of knows it all, but in preparing for that next step. And what's important there?
Well, I think the first thing is actually putting some thought and preparation into the next step. So, the one thing that we always talk to business owners about is we call it the day one plan. What is your plan for the day after you sell your business or hand your business over to the next generation, whatever the case may be from a succession standpoint, right? What's your plan for that day? And if your plan is, well, I'm just going to go reduce my handicap, or I'm going to go, spend some time at my second house, my vacation house, we invite them to think differently about it and to think deeper about it. Really figure out, what are you going to do? Because what they don't know is that what happens on that day is all of a sudden their phone goes silent. Nobody texts them. Nobody calls them. Nobody's reaching out to them to solve a problem. Nobody wants to take them to lunch to sell them some new whiz-bang program. The level of demand that they have faced in the past almost immediately evaporates. And most of them are not prepared for that.
How many, what's your, this is just a general stereotype, but how many people have their identity in their business?
Well, generally, don't we all, Jim? I mean, don't we all? I mean,
When
frankly,
you say, what do you do? What do you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
It's like we all kind of have our identity wrapped up in that
It's
business,
the
and
American
particularly
way.
as a business owner, where the lights don't go on, the loans, the payroll, the all the things that go on in a business kind of rest on our shoulders. And any rate, keep going about the whole team and what that's made up of. Who do you see really essential as being on that team? And separate the transaction component of the sale of the business from the preparing for that what's next.
Well, first and foremost, this kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway because a lot of people do skip this. First is your family, your spouse, your immediate kids. Get them on board with what your thinking is. I can't tell you, we've had many times a business owner come to us, and they generally come to an outside advisor like us because we're kind of the door of last resort, right? They've they've talked to their family. They had this idea in their head that the kids were going to take over the business, and all of a sudden, at some big family dinner, the kid says, "Pops, that's not for us. We're not going to be your successor. You need to figure out what to do." And all of a sudden, that's been Pops's dream and thought process for the last several years, right? And so he's kind of taken back. So I say, first and foremost, your family. Get your family involved. Then talk to your accountant. There is a big shift that needs to take place. If you're going to sell your business, if you don't have a successor, either a key person in your business or a family member or someone that that is teed up and ready to take over for you, if you're going to have to sell your business to an outsider that you may not know, you need to shift the strategy, your financial strategy of your business. Most business owners are operating on a financial strategy with their accountants in concert with their accountants of minimize my taxable liability, maximize my personal benefit, minimize my tax liability. Now you want to shift that strategy a little bit. What you want to do is take all of your personal, little fingertips out of the business and maximize the profitability of the business. So you demonstrate to an incoming buyer the profit potential that this business has.
Huge difference in perspective.
It is. It's revolutionary. Most business owners think that they can sell their business based on its potential, and the reality is business buyers buy your business based on its prior performance. So if you
the
can,
accountant you mentioned,
yep.
Who else is involved in the transaction side of that are critical players?
Next is your business attorney. And I always say, go to your business attorney and ask your business attorney, are you well versed in transactions? And transactions being the key word that the business attorneys will understand. And if you're not well versed in transactions, which is very common, you might have had a general business attorney that helped you set up your family trust, that helped your kids with their speeding tickets when they first learned to drive, did all the kind of basic legal work for you. But if they do not have a good amount of transaction experience, then ask them to recommend an attorney to you that specializes in transactions. Because a transaction, when you sell your business or transfer your business, typically it is the largest financial transaction that most business owners ever undertake. And you
Certainly
want
the most emotional.
Yeah, and you want the best people on your team, and the best people are those that have got a lot of experience in that space. They can really help you see around the corners. So have your accountant, have your attorney. If you again, always have your family involved in that. If you may need a business advisor that specializes in your industry. If you're in a very niche industry, it can be really good to have a consultant that's a specialist in the industry there as well. And typically, you'll use somebody like us, an M&A advisor or a business broker, that will basically run the process, run the marketing process, and run the entire sale process for you as well.
Sounds good. And we come into the picture kind
Now,
of as I shift over from the transaction side to what you had started alluding to, the what's next in life, your purpose. Trinity's major focus, where when we start with somebody, when we go through our discovery experience, why do you hang on to money? And people say, well, wait, I'm comparing you with somebody that my bank that invests my money and their performance is terrible, or I'm upset. That's why they're looking. And we go, well, we start with, why do you have money? I mean, after all, think about it. And most of the times people will say to us, they've never been asked questions like that. And it gets into all of the techniques and things that you can use in the advanced planning arena, whether that be tax-wise. So we pull it all together. And what we're really known for is looking at that. What is my purpose? What lights me up? And oftentimes people can't relate to, oh, well, this business has always provided my income. Now, how am I going to shift to this? It's one of the main reasons what we see that people don't prepare. They can't even see life without that business. But we really enjoy going deep with people and looking at that, what's next, and kind of being able to enjoy life together. I know both of us talk about the importance of having your wife at the table, your spouse, forgive me, where the wife is the business owner, particularly today, but where you get both partners at the table and you're able to say, what is it? And I've never met two people that are exactly the same. Oftentimes, one will speak more than the other, but there's always two significant players at that table if you are married and have that person to share life with. And we love going into pulling those two things together, creating that meaningful next step. And Steve, you had mentioned something earlier about someone one side of the table saying, well, you're going to do something outside of being here at home.
Yeah, well, that's I talked about, talk first with your family, with the attorney, with your accountant, right, and then select an advisor. Once you've got all that done, you've made a decision that you're going to have to go outside. Really, phase two is you got to sit down with your wealth manager and your tax planners, because this is you hit the nail right on the head, and they're going to be involved with you throughout the process. So as the numbers begin to get crystallized, you want to start with, okay, what do we expect this to be able to produce for us in terms of after tax nest egg, if you will, and then how are we going to use that moving forward? That's really, really a key point. And yeah, that's, the thing we see all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. A business owner goes home and says, oh, hey, I talked to an advisor a day. I think I'm going to put the business on the market and sell it. And the spouse will say something effective, well, I don't know what the heck you're going to do next, but don't plan on coming home every day, right? You may need to find another job then. So that's why I say you got to have the family involved up first. Make sure everybody's on the same page. You'll find you'll be much, much happier in that regard.
Yep. And it's also finding that, but another thing that I love dovetails well, that worked particularly well with my family, and I got this from you, Steve, I give you credit for it, is that finding that balance. Turns out my wife, who enjoys a life of staying at home, but also is kind of like, oh, well, you're always gone. I'd like to, when I created more balance of being at home more often, then it was kind of like, okay, well, yeah, go off and play with that business. And my personal goal is I love doing what I do. And I do need to take more time off, which fits well into what you were talking about, the business not being completely dependent on any one person. Want to also mention something that you talked about there. If you'll talk with us before, us being the wealth advisor, most of us, particularly those that get into the advanced planning arena, can make a huge difference in the tax impact, particularly if you're charitably inclined. So for many people, they didn't realize, whoa, this is a lot of money. I mean, they knew it was worth something, but what? And once it gets into the bigger numbers, some charitable planning before the sale takes place, before this gets inked, can make a huge difference tax wise in being able to get a deduction to a charitable pot, a portion of that business that you give before the sale, which creates a deduction and helps offset some of the sale. So those are some fun things that we love to work with. And really, again, when you're tying in your purpose, your meaning for money, it all fits into that next season in life where you're able to enjoy it. Okay, we talked about the team, the people involved, the business advisor, the tax strategist, the estate. We didn't talk much about the estate planning, but that often, Steve, talk a little bit about business transition, oftentimes where you are keeping it in the family, or you're trying to determine whether you're going to keep it in the family. Most people don't talk about that until it's too late, something health-wise happens. But how do you deal with that? How do you address that with the owner that says, oh, I don't need to worry about this. My son, or whoops, I have two sons. I have a son and a daughter. How is that going to work out?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head when you kind of introduced this as saying you got to do it in advance. So, particularly from a tax perspective, you don't do tax planning after a transaction. You have to do everything in advance, or you don't get to take advantage of a lot of the various resources that are available to you to minimize your taxes and minimize the impact on the nest egg that you're looking to develop here. And as it relates to splitting that up among family, or if you have key people in the business that you want to hand off the business to. You may have family members that are not blood relatives, but you consider them family at work, right? So
Yeah,
there are
people.
Those take very deliberate processes, and those things take time to plan those out effectively. I would say the one thing that business owners, when we survey them, after the fact, 3-5 years down the road, the one thing that they're always proudest of is when the business is really excelling and exceeding, after they sold it. The business continues to exist, continues to do really, really well. They get so much satisfaction out of seeing, that it really is hitting its stride. And I'm, so proud that I started that and I created that. And these guys are really being able to take it to the next level.
What percentage of people, Steve, you're involved in a lot of sales side transactions. When the sale takes place, when they've exited, what percentage do you see are really happy with how that went down, the next step in life? What's your experience there?
Well, statistically, in our industry, the numbers are really poor. And frankly, the statistics that the Harvard Business School produced some years ago, and which have continued to be validated over and over. Wash U just did a big study last year on this as well. Most business owners are dissatisfied, and they really go through the 7 stages of grief when they sell their business. It's the closest, that whole 7 stages of grief process is the closest parallel to basically the loneliness and lack of personal value that they feel by having that demand, if you will, shut off the day after they sell their business. They're just not well prepared for it. So, we learned this several years ago in our company, and we kind of flipped our whole mindset. So when we sit down with sellers today, the first thing we tell them is we work through this process of trying to help them identify who's the ideal buyer for your business, right? We want you to be really happy with the person you choose to sell the business to. Because in that scenario, what what we find is that really has been the key to success for those that have been really happy. They feel like, hey, I handed the reins to the right person. They were really good stewards of the company, and they've really taken to the company to new shoes. And we've had deals come unglued some point during the due diligence where the seller will, just this last year, we had a very large deal, finished a large meeting. We're about halfway through due diligence. The whole buyer's team exits. Most of the seller's team exits. And the husband and wife, as they're getting ready to leave, they said, "Can we chat for a few more minutes?" And closed our conference room door and sat back down and said, "We don't know how to tell you this, but we got to get out of this. We can't sell to this person. We're just convinced that they won't take the company where we want it to go." And we had to unwind a whole situation there. But our client is typically the seller, and we want them to be happy at the close, happy at the year after the close, happy 3 years, 5 years, and every day thereafter. And
that's the importance of this transactional side, along with the personal.
it's not really a transaction. It's really a relationship. We're building a relationship. And if they're excited about the buyer, they will always be there for that buyer to help them. And buyers are going to get into unforeseen circumstances because, generally they don't know the market, the customers, the employees, the particular business itself. So they're on a pretty steep learning curve.
And when you say one of the biggest things that keeps that from happening during the sale transaction is that natural nature of, from the buyer's perspective, I want to get it for the lowest price that I can. And the seller side, I want to get it for the highest price that I can. I had an interesting conversation the other day where this is a guy that buys and sells businesses for a living. He's a young guy, pretty impressive guy, Steve. We may talk about him later. But this guy says, "I don't care what your price is. You can name the price. I'll name the terms. You want $100 million for this business? I'm going to pay you $1 a day for 100 million days." So it's like, oh, that puts a different spin. But does that difficulty, that tension between the buyer wanting the least and the seller wanting the most, is that the biggest problem that keeps people from realizing, or is it really, what do I want to do in life?
Well, so I don't really see the numbers as the biggest issue. So the numbers are what you go through first. It's the first step in the transfer, if you will. Yeah. Okay. So if you really take the time to build an exit plan, you're going to build an exit plan that's 3 to 5 years out. So in order to hit the value growth targets,
timeline, 3 to 5 years from now. And I think one of the first questions you ask is this the first time you've considered selling this, or have you been down this road for long? So ideally it's 3 to 5 years out.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to start the process 3 to 5 years out to really position yourself to be in a good place. And, and if you do that, you're going to put yourself in pretty rarefied air, because less than 5% of business owners do that.
Oh, is that right?
Very, very few do that. But if you do that, the results are usually the spectacular results that you're looking for. So, the numbers, there's always this natural tension up front. The seller wants the most possible. The buyer wants to pay the least possible. There are some components of that. And first and foremost, that's why we strongly encourage business owners to get their business valued and get it valued on a regular, recurring basis. Most business owners I can count on one hand in the last 20 years, the business owners that came to us with a valuation in hand. the vast majority of them have never had their business valued before. And so they walk around with some number in their head because they had lunch with Bob at the club who had just sold his company. And Bob said, well, I got $68 billion for my company. And they think, well, geez, my company was better than his. I should be worth at least 68 billion. So they sit down with you, Jim, and they tell you, yeah, my balance sheet looks pretty good. I've got this company that's probably worth 68 billion. But then they get their valuation, it comes in and it's worth 6 billion. Okay, now we got to sit down and do some planning, right?
Right. And which that's why we like using you, Steve, is we like to update the business value with not a you might talk a little bit about that, the difference in valuation methodologies. You can see your accountant and get a $10,000 bill for a deep in-depth appraisal. We like to update it every 2 years.
Yeah.
What is this worth? And we want to get it from someone like you that knows the numbers, knows all the variables, knows the owner dependency, knows all of those things. And over that 3 to 5 years, you can prepare somebody kind of for lifestyle, for transition, for tax wise, all of those things that help it to make it a much smoother transition.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And, the other thing is you're basically, as a business owner, holding yourself accountable for increasing the value. So very often business owners don't know the elements of business value. So, they think, for example, they think they need to be on a first name basis with all their key customers, right? And we tell them the exact opposite. You're better off not being, because that creates that owner dependency again. So I couldn't agree more, Jim. It's a measurement that should take place every other year to hold yourself accountable that you're growing value over time, right?
And that also one of the ways that we use that is that when it's not growing, now businesses all go through cycles, but that's when people sometimes get, well, I am getting a little tired about this, as opposed to all of a sudden I'm frustrated and I'm ready to sell it. And it isn't like a stock market where you've got 1,000 buyers and 1,000 sellers.
I'm going to give you a quick story. So I told you one before we went on about a doctor. I'm going to tell you another one about a doctor that I recently experienced as well. So a very prominent local doctor here in town, built his practice here, extremely well known within his specialty nationwide. He's a true expert. Decided that, hey, I'm going to retire at the end of 2025 is his original goal. I'm going to retire at the end of 2025. And so basically what he started doing was scaling himself back in his practice. So he got on what we call the glider path, meaning that every year he would work less and less in the business, but he didn't backfill himself. So what happens now is revenues begin to go on this ever declining trend, right? So now think of yourself as a buyer on the other side, and you're evaluating this business that's stepping down in value year after year. The number one question that pops in your mind is, where's the bottom? When is this going to stop, right? I don't want to catch this falling knife. And then the second mistake this guy did is he told his staff that, I'm going to retire at the end of the year. Well, his staff was not anywhere near retirement age. So guess what starts happening? All his high-powered, very valuable, outstandingly skilled staff polished up their resumes and they started leaving him. So, now all of a sudden he's got less staff, so he's got less capacity to work, and the business just kind of starts gliding its way down to closure. Right. And here he had,
do not make this mistake. Folks.
Yeah, here he had this, this golden egg sitting there that had tremendous value that if he would have really taken the time to plan properly, he could have really realized that and had that available to him at the next point in his life. But effectively what happens is he got to the point where he had to start subsidizing his business operation. And, that's a bad place to be in.
And certainly not a good place for selling the business. Here's a good question, Steve, by Dave. This is a good one. How is the sale of a business taxed, specifically a single member LLC S Corp?
So
So,
it depends upon whether it's an asset sale or a share sale, first and foremost, right?
yeah.
Um, and it there are a lot of ifs in terms of how the transaction is put together. So, what I would say, if it's significant, if you're looking at a capital gain of 500,000 or more, there are several avenues. I'm not going to say a lot, but there are several avenues you can take to basically shield and defer taxes over the course of your life and your heirs' lives. And you've got a lot of things that are at your disposal. If it's a smaller capital gain, if you will, at the end of the day, then you're not going to have as many avenues to work with. But there's no one simple answer to that particular question. We could talk about that for the rest of the afternoon, actually. And it depends upon the circumstance that surround the transaction.
And I think you addressed that to some extent. Sorry, David, for not having a specific example without knowing the particular details, where you want to know, do you have that transaction specialist? I know in one situation we were looking at, it was a whole lot of, do we consider stuff goodwill, particularly when you're looking at depreciation in the factor and how it's treated tax-wise?
Yeah, this is why that's exactly why planning is so important. Because if you're in that situation, you want to sit down with your wealth manager, your tax planner, and your advisor to model various scenarios. So if you're an S corp and you're selling it under an asset sale, you're going to have what's called an allocation of the purchase price, right? And the way the purchase price is allocated determines your tax liability, and depreciation recapture is going to be one of those things that comes into play. So, you really want to model it out and figure out what are going to be the ideal scenarios for you when you sit down and work the deal with the buyer. And to your point earlier, set the price. The price and the terms are two different things. Sometimes a lower price and better terms works much better for you and your family.
Yep. And transitioning that lifestyle. How many business owners? Here's another question here, Steve. How do personal bennies like car, like education for kids, oops, not sure about that one, but that are taken as business perks, how did that come into? I think you kind of addressed that a little earlier.
Well, again,
Into the price of the question was, how do those consider? And obviously, if your lifestyle is using that, then that will be different X business. But Steve, you were addressing kind of how that affects the price. You want to pull that out if you're selling the business.
Yeah, if you're planning, if you're really going to take some time and put together a plan for your business, and you're going to look out, 3 to 5 years like we recommend, you're going to clean the business up from all those personal bennies in the business over time. So you want the numbers to be as clean as possible and the business to be as profitable as possible. And candidly, I'll tip my hat to the accountants. Usually they've done a really good job of minimizing your tax liability. The fact of the matter is you may pay more taxes over a couple of years, but you got to remember, you're going to be paid a multiple typically of the free cash flow of the business. So if you make an impact, we've seen people make dramatic impacts to the tax, to the free cash flow of the business, and you get paid 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times that, it's worth paying a little bit more in taxes for a couple of years to get that bigger payday at the end of the day. Worth it by a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. How many people just walk away because they wait until they're too tired? They enjoy what they're doing. They're a professional. Their identity is tied up into it, and they just walk away. We see that in the professional field quite a bit. And you had a good example. Speak to that a little bit, Steve.
Yeah. I was telling you before we jumped on, we had another doctor by chance, and I love medical professionals. I think they're angels here on earth, right? They do so much good in the world. but they're highly educated people. But we had a guy that unfortunately had a heart attack and died immediately. One Sunday evening, right? Uh, Wife didn't work outside of the home. Had a very comfortable practice. Monday morning, everybody shows up to work. Nobody knew any different. The doctor had not done any real estate planning. Had not done any estate planning at all, and had not done any business succession planning whatsoever. So, imagine the family, they're reeling. All of a sudden, this guy is gone, right? Was not sick, was not on, was not expected to have that at all, but all of a sudden he's gone. Nobody knew what the heck to do. Nobody knew who to call. There was no link to the passwords in his personal computers or anything of that nature. His business computer, his office manager had some access in there, but none of his personal stuff was in play. There was nobody knew the combination to the safe, and his practice was booked the following week. So he's got employees, he's got patients coming in, and the family was just, what do we do in this scenario? And unfortunately, we got referred in and we provided some help, but we helped the family get through that situation. But they ended up with literally pennies on the dollar of what that practice would have been worth with the appropriate planning and some contingencies in play for an event like this. So sad to see it happen, but it happens all the time.
Don't let that happen to you, folks. Planning ahead, that's the hallmark of our business, is planning, looking ahead, being proactive. Here's a good question along those lines. Is it too late if you need to sell it now? Bill, I hear your question. No, health issues come up all the time. We do the best that we can. Be happy to go into specifics with you. Just give us a shout. This is a good time to talk about a shout out to us. Both of us have an offer for you. If you've gotten something out of this or you'd like something more, for us here at Trinity, we're doing a no-cost meaning of money conversation. So we do this with all of our business owners, so to help them determine kind of what is their meaning for money and separate that from the business. So what is your meaning of money? For everyone, it starts out as you've learned things from your parents. And if you're older, that might have been a long time ago, and it might be some mentor. But you learn something. Your spouse may have learned something from theirs, and they're either things that you do want to do or you don't want to do, but that shapes your early thinking. Then you have things that have happened, experience in life that happens when you're together. And we find that fascinating. It's one of the most enjoyable conversations. This is a $500. It takes an hour to an hour and a half. We sit down with you. There is no cost for this for the first 10 people that reach out to us. So if you're interested in a meaning for money conversation, we're happy to do that. Go on to that scheduling link that's listed in the chat box, and you'll find one for me there, a Calendly link that'll fit into my calendar and your calendar. Pick a time, and the first 10 people that sign up for that, we will do that meaning of money conversation. You and your spouse, or if you're single, it's just you, but I'll guide you through that process. You end up getting a takeaway that will help you kind of mean something really for the legacy that you leave behind, for the what's most important in life, and really what is your meaning for money. Money for money is worth nothing, but it's what it can do, and particularly for your family. We love explaining to particularly business owners or people of higher net worth that go, when your kids are listening to that estate plan or that will or that trust describe what happens, it's a very cold feeling of legalese that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We actually take a recording of this so it's something that you walk away with, and your kids get the lessons that you learned in life and what are most important to you in life that you would like to pass on. So we call that the meaning of money conversation. That's something that we're doing for the first 10 people that sign up, no cost. Steve, I know you're doing something, and your link is listed right there as well in the chat box. What are you doing for people that come that'll reach out to you?
Well, for business owners that are interested, we're doing What's the Business Worth? So book some time with me. I'll pull
Oh,
up the
wow.
rules of thumb for your business. We'll talk about the general framework of how businesses within your industry are valued. What are some of the key metrics that are really, really important? And talk with you about how your particular business may compare. And I'll tell you more about our valuation products. And if you're interested in get a full evaluation, then we do a significant discount for Jim's clients and Jim's referral clients, and we'll be happy to share those details with you one-on-one.
Well, I very much appreciate that, Steve. That's why we love sending business to you guys. So thank you very much. Let me check. Oh, we got one more question. Nope, that was the question that I asked earlier. If not, anything that you want to wrap with, Steve, that we left off maybe?
Yeah, I think you're having a couple of things. The key takeaways that I'd love for people to remember is take the time to plan your exit and communicate that plan to those that you love and those that you trust, and get your trusted advisors involved, get your wealth management professionals involved, get your accountants involved, get your business attorneys involved in helping you. And the one thing business owners are most hesitant to do is raise their hand and ask for help. And this is one of those situations where I guarantee the more help you ask for, the better the results are going to be for you and your family down the road. So don't be afraid in these scenarios, to raise your hand and ask for help, because most of us only do it one time, and you want to do it to the best of your ability.
And I will add on to that Bill, it's the only time that's too late is when you don't do it. So start today. I think every client that we end up working with says, I wish I'd started this 10 years ago. Well, you couldn't start it 10 years ago. You're starting it today. So get started now. And thank you for your time and attention here. And if you're interested, this will be sent out, a copy of this for later. And again, those first people that sign up for this, we're happy to give away that meaning of money conversation and that business valuation. So thank you, Steve. We'll
Awesome.
see you next time. Oh, one other thing, feel free to type in there any other ideas that you would like to hear about that we might bring to the surface for you in today's complex world. We'll talk later. Thank you very much for tuning in today.
Great to see you, Jim.
All righty. Till next time.